Good afternoon, everybody. And it is 12:15 and it's time to get started. So welcome to the second half of Friday, the last day of the week, and excited that you're here today. As you enter into the space, I want to encourage you to enjoy your lunch. I want to congratulate you for investing some time in yourself. And I picked this image today because, first of all, it's a little peaceful, but it also represents the fact that the winds of change are constantly around us. And we, like trees, we can bend or we can break. And that's certainly a lead into our topic today, which is about bending or breaking and how grit and resilience are powerful skills within the adaptability framework. So, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you that are repeats to the session, I want to welcome you back. We're now on our 12th episode, and I want to shout out to Sandra Metzger, my co-host. Couldn't be with us here today because she's helping her son, and she's a grandmother, so their new grandbaby out in Colorado moving today. So she sends her best wishes as well. But just as an orientation, if you're not familiar with the framework, the reason why Sandra and I have created this opportunity is the fact that we've learned that over 31% of leaders want to grow their skills. And not just leaders, these are people taking their professional development seriously. But the sad reality is they just don't have time. And I'm sure you can relate to that. So we thought, how do we combat that? Well, Friday's a good day, right? Hopefully by now you've gotten your major responsibilities done. There's always more work to do. But how about lunchtime? You got to take a pause. You got to refill your tank. How about we fill your mind with one skill, one topic, one best practice that we can bring to you in a very short but in powerful way. So today we're here to seed your mind. I want to congratulate you for investing in yourself, fueling your curiosity, and just welcome you to stay open to a concept. It's grit. It is resilience. You probably know those words, but if you slow down enough to really peel the onion a little bit, there's a lot here that hopefully can inspire you to think differently. Fortunately, the weekend's ahead of us. If you're taking a long dog walk, you have some quiet time, whatever that time and space looks like, where you might begin to reflect on what your experience was this week. I'm hoping this will germinate a little bit. And as you approach Monday, be motivated to bring one small action, one small behavior into your repetition of being in the professional that you are, because it takes reps to get to build a habit. And when we build and set new habits, that's where we begin to continue to fuel our own professional performance. So I also want to shout out, we've got a wide range of individuals today. Some people I've met just this week. It's been a great week. Had a chance to engage over 250 emerging leaders downtown Indianapolis at the Hyatt as part of the Indiana Chamber's Emerging Leaders Forum. And, when someone clicks your QR code saying, follow me on LinkedIn, you just never know where things will wind up. But it's great to have some of you here. And I also want to shout out to the fact that we're a community. I've got a colleague here from Caraco that's joining us. So if you please kindly go to the beach for me, because I can't do that here in Indiana, but you can. I want to just shout out to the community that I'm very much well fed by. As you know, I'm an adaptability coach. 2 years ago, I discovered the power of the adaptability quotient. And I'm proud and honored to say that I'm a member of 180 coaches that have been trained and certified in this craft that continues to grow around the world. So these are my people. We had a chance to get away for what I'll call a corporate retreat in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin last week. And boy, did I need it. Just a chance to get away, to get fed by others, best practice sharing. Maybe there's a little commiserating on how hard it is to be a solopreneur, right? In pursuing what we're doing, but it was outstanding. So I just wanted to bring that into focus. All right. And so by default, I welcome you into this educational community in any way in which you'd wish. So our topic today is around bending, don't breaking, right? We saw the trees, the winds of change. They're always there. Some would say they're getting so severe at times where we need to question our relationship with change. I'm certainly an advocate for that. So you're here to expand that a little bit more and explore it. But we're going to talk about the secret edge of grit and resilience in the turbulence of now. And one of the leading authors, Angela Duckworth, wrote a book around grit. Perhaps you've heard of it. It was a New York Times bestseller. But I just want to offer a fact because, I have my opinions, but a vast majority of what I do in this space is tied to research. And I think that's incredibly important, especially as we're looking to, gain the credibility as we're all molding adult learners in some form or fashion, even our own minds. We want to know what's true. And so through the book, there was a study of 2,000 high school juniors in the Chicago public school system where they were able to measure their degree of grit and get an understanding of their academic achievements. And as a metric, it showed that those students with higher grit had a stronger correlation to educational outcomes and IQ. All right. So that I thought was powerful and hopefully endorses the fact that there's something here to garner your continued attention. So we have an opportunity to be interactive today. I'd like you, if you could please navigate to your comment section. There's a chance for you to, if you'd like to shout out where you're from today, welcome to that. I'll give you a quick hello. But in addition to that, I want to ask you the provocative and playful question, what goes well together? What thing plus this thing makes something even better than the two things individually? I'll give you a couple thought starters of things that caught my attention while you're dropping in your comments here. So, how about this? How about rainy days and a good book? I would wholeheartedly agree, but I'll add a third because that usually means a nap is coming my way. How about sand and bare feet? Not too bad. Nice to see or feel that underneath your feet. How about bubble wrap and stress relief? That sounds kind of fun. I don't know anybody who can't resist popping a bubble wrap piece just for the pure joy and maybe relieving some stress. And then how about this one? Peanut butter and pickles. Now, I can't personally attest to that. I'm not quite sure I like that, but someone likes it and claims that it may be good together. So that might be on my exploratory list. But feel free to drop in chat something you think goes well together. Even if not, just mentally think about it. But that really is going to set up and tee up the notion of grit plus resilience. And we see Andrea joining from Indianapolis. Andrea, great to have you here for sure. I'm honored. Diana, talk about a community leader. Diana, you're my rock star in that category. Glad you're here. Tammy says, chocolate plus anything. I love it. You know what you want, but you're really flexible on how you can pair it. So I'm sure that leads you to many happy snacks. Ryan, great to have you from Westfield. And Andrea, football and chili. Yeah, right. It pairs nice, especially when there's a victory, but let's not overplay that. Well done. Let's see what else. I've got an Indianapolis native that's joining us for a pub in Ireland. Yeah, there you go. We'll just leave it at that. That's wonderful. And my colleague from Caraco, Christina, is really here. She says comfy room with Netflix or HBO is always a nice way to entertain. All right, great. Pizza on a Friday night. Yeah, you guys are on it. No surprise. All right, so the question is to lean into our topic a little further. What's better, grit or resilience? So if you have to pick one, and I realize that's a loaded question, what would you pick, grit or resilience? Let's see what you come up with. I'll give you a second or two. Grit or resilience? We'll lean into formal definitions in a little bit. You may change your opinion on this by the time we move forward. All right, I see an entry, I think, for grit. Yep. Looks like they're coming in. All right, well, we'll continue on. So I like to give formulas. Maybe it's the black belt in me that likes to take real life and put it into some type of an equation that helps us test it. So I'm here to say that, so Matt says, Matt from South Bend, good to see you, Matt. Someone I met, this week downtown, which was kind of cool. That was at the Slippery Noodle. That was fun. People take quick action plus people who take time to deeply analyze. All right. Yeah, definitely components of what we're going to find and unpack here in grit and resilience. Ryan, you're calling out grit. Tammy, you're taking up the other side, resilience, bounce back. Yeah, good. So thank you for that early indication. So I'm here to say that it's really not either or. I mean, it could be because we're going to have degrees of grit high or low, resilience high or low. But ideally, optimally, grit plus resilience is that powerful combination that can lead to high performance. Right now, that's not that's in a perfect world. It's an equation. But how about in real life? right? Within the context and confine or the constraints of the adaptability quotient, these are two powerful skills that can individually be measured. So I'm here to unpack this in a sense of high, medium, and low to get a sense of where do you stand in this strength and this skill of grit. So by definition, grit is that perseverance and passion to achieve a long-term goal despite obstacles. It's about staying the course, maintaining effort, overcoming setbacks without losing motivation. If I think of a sports analogy, football's on right now. Unfortunately, our Lady Fever team is back home. I just admire their grit and their bounce back ability, and really proud of our Lady WNBA players here in Indianapolis. But you play any sport to get to that last game of the season. Sometimes even playing a game lights out to get to the very end is hard. Grit's a big component of it. So how do you recognize grit? What are the behaviors? What do people say if you're looking for grit? So people with high grit says, hey, I've got this. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Let's get going. People with medium grit is, let's do it. Let's proceed. But, I'm going to bring others along with me. I may need some support along the way. And people with low grit, it's like, I want to do something else. This one's too hard. This is not a 1,000-piece puzzle that I want to put together. Give me 25 pieces, give me 50 pieces. I'll take that on. But to persevere, for 4 hours, a 1,000-piece puzzle, not my game. So the reason why grit is important, what's the impact on the organization? When an organization goes through change, it takes time. And just because that software goes live doesn't mean the change is ended. Matter of fact, it's only started, and it's going to be 12, 18 months before habits reestablish. And an organization that has grit, they're able to follow through all the ups and downs, the learning, the relearning. That takes time for things to become habit. And it really, long-term resilience may limit openness to pivot is another element of how grit and resilience have to play against each other. Now, one thing I know for sure, and perhaps some of you know this as well, that any strength over applied is a weakness. Yes. So grit overplayed, the downside here is stubborn perseverance and the neglect of balance. I'll admit there's times where I've been so determined, thinking it was the right thing, rub a little dirt on it, keep going, where I can run out of gas. And, fortunately, our human bodies, we're so limited, it kind of forces us to take a deep breath, step away to find that balance again. But just recognize that there is a downside, of having too much grit so that we stay whole people. I wanted to pull an example of where I thought grit and resilience really showed up. And I love looking back at history. So first of all, we don't forget the valuable lessons that are available to us right away. It's comforting to look back and realize, what? I've got my glow light sitting here in my office that this gentleman was responsible for creating, almost over 200 years ago. So Thomas Edison, we all know his story. Perhaps we've taken for granted the light bulb. But the story goes is that he had to experiment with thousands and thousands and thousands of elements before he found the one that worked. That takes a ton of grit. And look at his quote, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. So not only is that grit just oozing with obviousness, it's an example of his emotional mindset to say, hey, this one failed. Let's celebrate that, because what's next? It could be the one. And I think that is really healthy and strong. So let's go on to resilience. So resilience is that ability to recover from adversary and continue functioning effectively. It includes emotional regulation, knowing where we're standing through the cycle of change, because it is an emotional process, coping ability, and psychological strength. So there's a lot in there. And so someone that has high degree of resilience, they're that rubber band that bounces back, bounces back, bounces back. They say setbacks. What setbacks? I'm already moving on to the next thing. Someone that has medium resilience is, let's discuss what might work now. It's that openness to still try, but a little bit of hesitancy, a little bit of cautious moving forward. And then someone with low resilience is, hey, challenges set me back and I'm trying to avoid it. I don't like making these errors or dealing with these changes because I'll get there, but it just takes me a long time. I don't have enough time to deal with another setback. And the reason why this is important from an impacts perspective, it also supports the change curve like we spoke about. But the downside of someone being overly resilient is you keep bouncing back, you may be tolerating something that's unacceptable. So what's causing you to bounce back? What is this thing that keeps popping up that's causing you resilience? It's great that you're bouncing back, but might it be smarter to deal with the issue that's causing you the stress in the first place and try to address, the root cause and problem solving so don't have to be as resilient? That I think is just smart. And the other part too is this emotional bypass. It takes physical and emotional energy to deal with the disappointment, however that shows up with you, whatever that loss or frustration is, to bounce back. Emotion fatigue, hey, I get it. I get it all the time over the half a dozen emotions that I claim to feel. But you have to keep recovering from that. And sometimes it takes time. And maybe you may be just in your effort to bounce back, you may not be spending enough time. Maybe in that grieving process, you're just understanding, checking in with yourself, what's really here, so that you can do it in a centered way. All right. I also want to go forward on with Thomas Edison's example of resilience. I did a little fact checking here. Apparently, Thomas Edison was considered slow in his youth. He didn't speaking English fluently until he was 4 years old, and he kind of suffered in a rigid school system. He was labeled slow by his teachers, and he even got detention, including rejection at times. And as he grew in his career, he was barred or not able to get into certain scientific learning institutions. Yet he persevered in science. And in 1905, he got a paper published that transformed physics. So think about that. All those times of being slow to speak, not being a star student, being put in I'll call it the slow class, if that's hopefully is still appropriate to say. He didn't let that stop his own learning, right, to the point where he published. And then what I was amazed to realize, here's his factory. He's testing these filaments to find the thing that's going to generate electricity. And his factory burns down. Oh my goodness, 1914. Here's the picture of it. And you know what he says? He said, "Hey kid, go get your mother and all of her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." What emotional regulation, what mindset and positivity strength. And the story goes, just 2 weeks later, his team was reassembled. They had a makeshift lab and they were back testing these filaments again. So I enjoyed learning about it. I enjoyed telling you the story, and I hope that generates some additional learning and perspectives for you personally in the area of grit and resilience. So if I had to do a side-by-side comparison in a simple way, I'll turn to sports and the human body and an athlete. Resilience is like a sprinter, right? The body of a sprinter, male or female, any stage of life, is at the cellular level about getting a burst of energy to maximize the output of that muscle and all related components to get down this short path as fast as possible, right? A sprinter can't be a marathon runner because the cellular level structure, the way the energy is consumed, and the duration and makeup of their muscles don't support it, right? So that is about that bounce back ability. And the correlation here, if someone is high in resilience, yet they're faced with a situation that requires a long-term sustainable effort, they too will feel the friction. They're a physical nature, their emotions will be tired, and they won't be as successful in that long-term race. Now, the marathon runner is just the opposite. Physiologically, you tend to see a little bit of a less muscle profile, and to be a little taller and leaner, at least the athletes that I see, but they are about going the distance. It's that steady drip of fuel that continues to consume and consume and consume. I don't want to over-explain it better than that. I'm not a physical therapist, but I think the point well taken. Someone that can run the distance would be challenged to run the sprint, right? So if you're high grit, you can go the distance, but you may be having a hard time in dealing with the short-term disruptions. They're not interdependent. I mean, they're related, but they're not interdependent. Just because you're high in grit doesn't mean you're low and resilient, and just the opposite. All right, so I hope that was helpful. So now let's bring in the science, right? The adaptability quotient, developed over 7 years ago globally, originated through over 100 scientific peer-reviewed published articles that said these things that are studied and well known within science correlate to adaptability, which then we know correlates to dealing better with change. And in the three areas, ability, character, how you're born and how you show up, and the environment, the work environment that you live in, the air we breathe, we're focused specifically on ability. So this is the strength of the muscle that you have, that you work out, that gets stronger. You build, tear down those muscles. You learn through success and failure and relearning and that cycle loop. There are 5. Grit, of course, squarely on topic. I'll call out resilience since we're on point. There's also mental flexibility, the ability to hold conflicting ideas in harmony and peaceful tension for a period of time to explore possibilities. Mindset is centered on positive psychology. I believe good things can come from change. And then last but not least, unlearning. One of my favorites, we did a LinkedIn Live session on this. There's a recording available if you're interested. Look at our YouTube channel. But unlearning is about letting go of those things which are no longer relevant. Could be a belief, a bias, an assumption you have about a person or a situation, letting go of old data. If you're pulling data or references from even 2020, 21, 22, buses left, right? Find something that's more relevant for today. So that's a deep one. But let's look at specifically, as again, I coach individuals, teams, and entire organizations on just the 2 subdimensions of grit. Now, this is a real life person that has taken this assessment. Of course, it's genericized and protected for their own, privacy and security reasons. But in this case, this individual had, I'd say, a below average score as related to the overall AQ. And as we peel the onions to look at what are the things, that are holding them back, everyone has areas of strengths within adaptability, like we all do in areas of our bell curve of skills and talents. We have those that are great and those that could be developed. Well, I'm calling these out specifically because this is really an opportunity to say, what could and should I do something about this? And so in this case, grit, score came in at 53. That's 21 points below the threshold of where somebody has a medium or a moderate level of grit. So this has a high sense of urgency, as I have coached people like this to say, hey, they're both a little bit on the below average side. Resilience they're not bad. They're close. They're just about, 5 points away to the medium phase. And if we can at least address the low, get into medium, then we're moving the average up and we're in a good place. Of course, that's in addition to recognizing the strengths that show up here. But in this case, I would prioritize grit over resilience, right? And there's a whole talk track that I'm tempted to go into here, but in the sake of time, I won't, which is about what is it that you learn from a resilience in your ability to bounce back that can be magnified to a different horizon for the long run game. So let's build upon that a little bit further. Now we'll see here, as I mentioned before, all 5 skills within the dimension of ability. This person overall is in an okay place for coming to ability, That correlates to at least close to average AQ score. But now we're going to see that grit significantly outpaces resilience. This person's kind of best in class. Anytime you get close to that 90 mark, you're in that, hey, I'm a leader in this area. And as I coach individuals and teams, when people are this high, first of all, recognize it, own it, flaunt it proudly, and inspire others to join you and do what you're doing. So this person's a grit champion, but they were lacking the resilience. We all bounce back, but the question is, how long does it take? The world moves so fast. For us to be in the state of recovery for whether it is 6 hours, half a day, a week, maybe even a month in extreme circumstances, that's fine if that's what you need. But the question is, are there things that you can do? And the answer is yes, to shorten that recovery time frame so you can get back in the game. If you use a sports analogy, halftime is the perfect opportunity for the coach to take the team off the field, give them that pep talk about what they did really well the first half, talk about what they need to do better the second half. Games are won and lost in the second half. Coaches make adjustments, players get the feedback they need, they freshen up, they bounce back from whatever wasn't optimal about the game to go back and hopefully win the game at the end. Now, if they've got grit, they're going to get to the fourth quarter and still have the gas in the tank to win it, right? But it's that resilience, that bounce back ability in a point in time that allows, and the coach helps the team, and the teams help themselves and each other to rally each other back. So with this, the kind of the headlines I had for this individual was, so grit is the guide. You have the ability to go the distance. So trust your engine. Right? If you got enough gas in the tank to take the long journey, don't worry about the traffic jam you're sitting in at the moment as much. You're going to be able to get there. Of course, you got to deal with the traffic jam. You got to deal with the challenge in front of you, but have the confidence that the big picture is still heading in the direction and you will get there, right? Then the other part is when it comes to resilience, let's just not be surprised when it happens. Whatever that looks like, we can't predict the things we come in our lives. But as I think about my mental preparation going into a week, I kind of play that movie, what I hope is going to happen, what I can expect. But I've started recently to say, okay, there's going to be a couple of things this week that I don't know about. When's it going to happen? And, this is a new practice for me. When it happens, I'm like, oh, well, here it is. It's a Tuesday afternoon and just hit the fan. Here it is. Thanks, Pete. But at least I wasn't caught surprised by it. So that's already maybe getting mentally a little warm up. But with this is also a key part of resilience, and this is a lead into where we're going to close in just a few minutes, is on the power of why. Resilience, bouncing back, is possible because there's some force that's important to us, be it a value, a dream, or aspiration, professionally or personally, that attracts us to go in a direction. That's your North Star, right? If you're a compass, it's that magnetic attraction that says, hey, this is worthwhile, keep doing it. A way to do this in a very simple way in this coaching example is clarify the bigger picture, right? Chances are grid is pointing you in that direction. Don't lose sight of it in that near-term setback because they could be one and the same, right? So let that be a fuel to bounce back quickly. And another great way to deal with something that you're currently dealing with that's new, it's new today, that Tuesday afternoon curveball that I faced probably is not truly unique. There's probably something in the past that I've done that I can draw from, right? So look back. So we've all probably forgotten about Thomas Edison. We take advantage of the light bulb, or we take for granted the light bulb. Think about how many challenges you've faced already so far this year. Go back to COVID if you have to, right? Think about the big disruptions in your life. What was the challenge? How did you react to it? How did you respond to it? You got through it. Maybe you did it with grace and style. It wasn't a big deal. Maybe you made a couple of mistakes and you learned from it, but you still learned from it and you got through it. Draw your motivation by looking back to say, well, I've done it before. I can probably do it again. So any of these four things individually or in combination is a great way to bounce back in the air of resilience, and was the talk track that I share with this individual in and around their profile. Taking this a little deeper, as I think you may be aware, the power of the adaptability quotient applied in an organizational context is at the team or enterprise level. So a leadership team that wants to be ambitious in innovation and growth to change for all the right reasons of growing an organization sustainably, the question now can be asked, how adaptable is my workforce? How trained, how change ready is my workforce? And as you peel the layers of that onion, you can ask, how much grit does my team have? How much resilience do they have? This is an example of an actual team report of an organization of about 200 individuals. Here's the results. 77% overall had grit. They're sitting in the high zone. So 62% had a high degree of grit. Now on the flip side, there's 38% where they were moderate, right? That's not bad. There's nobody in the low space. There's nobody really, really at risk here. So you have a pretty good bell curve here. But the question is, what can be done more? Because if this change that the organization is facing is going to be a big one, merger, acquisition, buyout, new market product launch, a large ERP implementation, that's going to require some grit, right? So how do you then address the needs of those that are not gritty to be improved so that you're keeping your workforce humming along and keeping up with this long sustained change? The resilience side tells a little bit of a different story. So this sits at 66%. So the average is lower than the grit. And now we see some 17% of the organization that just don't have that bounce back ability. So this is an invitation, an opportunity for talent development, leaders, managers to step in and do something about it, because these people are going to need help. All right, folks, I realize we just have a few minutes left. We're going to wind this down, so I appreciate your attention for a couple more minutes. So what do you do about this? So if I've hopefully raised some curiosity and interest to hopefully endorse the areas in which you've got grittiness, you've got some resilience, but you're wondering, what can I do to do a little bit more here? On the grit side, track your progress with journals and visualizations. So as you're trying to think more about going forward, think about looking back. Go back to a long arching goal that has taken some time and let that be some motivation and inspiration. Make sure the goals that you're setting for yourself, as far term and ambitious as they may be, make sure there's a clear connection with your purpose, vision, and values. It goes back to your why. If you can make that clear, you've got emotional energy and more gas in the tank to go the distance. You also can build some accountability through your peers. This could be about weight loss, fitness routine, learning more about AI in a practical way, or even doing that project that's novel and challenging at work. When you speak it to somebody, it's a commitment, it's in the universe, and you've got someone, your buddy, that can hold you accountable in a safe way. The last one here is about when you're persisting to move forward, make sure each milestone you hit, reward yourself. It could be dinner with a friend, it could be a walk at lunch, it could be that dress or pair of shoes or whatever it is you'd want to buy. Do it, because those things are important. On the resilience side is, recall lessons learned from past setbacks. Any form of journaling is very helpful. There's an exercise called doors closed, doors open, which is a way of looking at, what was it feel like when I was challenged by this? What did it look like when I was bounced back? And it has a lot of benefits in your mind. Obviously, stress management principles, simple mindfulness and breathing, waking up daily with gratitude is a great habit to get into. And then also reflect on the times that you have bounced back in the past. What did it feel like when you get there? If you can anchor on that emotional feeling, it's another magnet to help you move forward. All right, so you're seeing this formula again because now it's a little richer. So now grit is not plus resilience; it's multiplied. They're that powerful when they're put together. They're multiplied. But what's the common denominator? Bring in the why. Those with high whys can be a false multiplier within this equation. Those that don't have a high why or a clear why, it's going to detract your ability to have grittiness and resilience for high performance. All right, so final thought: grit keeps you in the fight, resilience helps you rise after the fall, but it's your why that makes every struggle meaningful and every comeback worthwhile. Right, folks, thanks for your time and attention. Our time went fast. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Carry on to the weekend ahead, but please consider joining us next Friday. Sandra will be back in the saddle, and she's going to dive into our AQ topic, which is AI topic. Got to get my acronyms correct, where she's going to talk about learning is change and have a hands-on practical session of a 5-minute learning loop, leveraging the abilities of AI to drive growth, new skill sets, and behaviors. Last but not least, thank you. I hope you've learned a little bit more about what I do and what Sandra does. If you're interested in certainly having a business discussion, we always welcome that. It's not why we're here, but it's a nice side benefit if you think there's ways that we can create value for you. Thanks again. Have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week.